Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending our E3 the first E3 conference. So far, we have 2,600 people attending from record 77 different countries and 400 universities. It's very impressive, and we plan to have it again. Just want to introduce myself, and we'll have the co-chair. I'm the chairman of the conference. We'll have the co-chair and other people presenting themselves in a second. My name is Mohammed Solomon. I'm a chair professor at the University of Houston. I'm also the department chairman of our petroleum engineering department at University of Houston. Welcome, and I'm sure you are going to have very exciting 2 days in this conference. Let me turn the microphone to my co-chair, Mr. Ibn Haq.
Thank you, and welcome from Marietta College. We're pleased to be offering this innovative programming. I am the chair of the combined department of petroleum engineering, geology, environmental engineering, and energy systems engineering. We're a small college. We put some of our programs together under one umbrella. This is an exciting program. I really want to express appreciation to Professor Ahmed Al-Garhi for all of his innovative work here. And I urge you to stay tuned for new initiatives that we'll be developing and offering in the coming years. And then with no further ado, I'd like to turn it over to the panel to introduce themselves and launch this program. I hope you all enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Chair and Co-Chair of the conference. And without any delay, let me go and share my slides here. I hope that everybody's seeing it. So this is the first session of the future. First session on the future of fossil energy. I am Moustafa Oraby, the moderator of the session. Let me start with good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all who are joined us here from all over the place, as Dr. Solomon mentioned. Welcome to the first session, which is the future of fossil energy. I'll be the moderator of the session. The way that the session will be run is we'll be introducing the panel speakers, then will be followed by short presentations from each panel speaker. Then we'll end up with an open discussion till the end of the session. Okay. So let me start with introducing the panel speakers. First is Dr. Farouq Ali. Dr. Farouq is a distinguished professor of petroleum engineering at the University of Houston. Previously, he was at the Pennsylvania State University, University of Alberta, and University of Calgary. He has worked on thermal energy and EOR nearly 60 years, and he has worked on many projects as well worldwide. Dr. Farouq has been honored for the research by the Society of Petroleum Engineers, the Canadian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, and the Russian Academy of Sciences. He was awarded honorary doctorates by 2 major universities in Russia. He is a member of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering. Then the second one will be by Dr. Hamid Soroush. Dr. Hamid is an internationally recognized geomechanics expert with more than 25 years of industry experience in different applications of rock mechanics in oil and gas, geothermal, and carbon storage spaces. He has conducted or managed more than 250 consulting and research projects worldwide. Dr. Hamid is the CEO of PETROLERN, LLC, providing strategic planning, leadership, and technical support for subsurface research and consulting projects. Prior to that, he held several positions with companies such as Dong Energy, Shell, Weatherford, Synergy, GMI, and CSIRO. His current research focus is on sustainable development of geothermal energy and carbon storage projects, with advanced geomechanical analysis. Dr. Hamid holds a PSc in mining engineering, a master in rock mechanics, and a PhD in petroleum engineering from Curtin University in Australia. He has published numerous journal and conference papers and has been selected as an SP Distinguished Speaker for three times in 2012, 2017, and 2020. The third speech will be, or the third presentation will be by Dr. Sherif Fakher. Dr. Sherif is an assistant professor in the Petroleum and Energy Engineering Department at the American University in Cairo. He holds a bachelor degree in Petroleum and Energy Engineering from the American University in Cairo, and a Master of Science and a PhD in Petroleum Engineering from Missouri University of Sciences and Technology. His previous research aimed to develop new technologies to improve oil and gas recovery in a safe and cost-effective manner while reducing the oil and gas industry's carbon footprint. His current research is focused on production enhancement, sustainability, and carbon dioxide management in the energy industry. Then Dr. Moustafa Oraby. Dr. Moustafa is currently a petroleum engineering professor and the director of the graduate program at the American University in Cairo. He has 25 years of experience in petroleum industry. He worked for both operating companies, Arco Exploration and Production Technology, and service companies both in Halliburton and Schlumberger. He has a global experience through working in North America, South America, Middle East, and Far East. He holds multiple US patents and published multiple papers. Dr. Oraby's current research interest is the EOR using vibroseismic applications and low salinity water injection. Without any further delay, we'll start the presentation of Dr. Farouq. Dr. Farouq, please go ahead.
Hello, good morning. Good morning. It's a very special pleasure to be at this E3 conference, the initiative of Moderator University. My greetings to Dr. Oraby, Dr. Ebenbeck, and Dr. Suleiman. I have a long relation with Moderator University, you could say, because one of my former students, Bob Chase, was the department chairman there for a long time. So we are talking about the fossil fuel demand, and I'm saying that it's here to stay. Some people think that this is far-fetched, but I'll give you some reasons for that. Look at the prices of oil and gas here. See how they have gone up, and they're going up. May I have the next slide, please? The price of gas in Europe is as high as $28 per MCF. If you saw the latest news, that's how it is going. President Biden asked OPEC to increase the oil production, and they rejected his demand. And then the other thing which is very interesting is that carbon tax in Canada right now is $40 per ton, and it's increasing $15 per ton every year. So that in 2030, it will be $170 per ton. So you can see that this will have a tremendous impact on the demand. The demand is going to be there. We know how to handle carbon dioxide. May I have the next slide, please? Next, please. Now, the first thing is this, that even the people who are great proponents of renewable energy, I'm one of them too, but you can show rather easily that renewable solar and wind, specifically, first of all, they're not reliable, and you need to have fossil fuel backup. Now you can see that in this last month or so when the oil prices start to skyrocket. All these countries in Europe especially were suffering because they had shut down coal plants and they didn't have any gas. And so the gas prices were shot up to as high as $28 per MCF. We pay only $5 or less. Now, if you were to replace all the electricity generation by solar, a state the size of Utah will be needed to be covered by solar panels. Now, some people will disagree with that because they will say, well, we can pack them really tightly, but that's just not possible. And other thing which is important is that huge amounts of water are used when you have solar panels to keep them clean. And an excellent example is the great solar plant in Saudi Arabia, Al Ain, and you can imagine what happens after a dust storm. And finally, nobody has given much thought to what will happen when these solar panels, solar farms, and the wind farms come to their natural end. Who is going to pay for the remediation of all that area? This problem is similar to what we are facing in Canada with the oil sands, tar sands. Nobody's thought about the remediation, and they say the cost of remediation could be hundreds of billions of dollars. May I have the next slide? Here is an example of how the fossil fuels are right now being used in renewable systems. You think about this, in Australia, outback. Australia is almost all outback except the coastal areas. And here's a picture you see of a diesel plant, diesel electric plant to power electrical cars. So that's how it is, that even though there is solar energy there, and Australia has apparently enough of it or whatever, but it's not enough to generate electricity for an electric car. If you're stuck in the outback, I can tell you a little bit of that. I've been to Australia many times. If you get stuck in the outback, you're lost forever. There's not even a GPS system there. So we need natural gas, oil, and coal for backup power. And also we need considerable surveillance of solar and wind farms by trucks, cars, boats, as the case may be. And as I said before, we need water for the solar farm. So fossil energy continues to play a role in renewables also. So one of the sorry, one of the questions is how much one of the question which comes up is that how much fossil fuel is there? Well, if you are willing to pay the price, there is unlimited. I've worked on EOR all my life, and I can tell you that we can recover any amount of oil so long as you are willing to pay for it. And then there is shale oil and gas, and that has just started. There are gigantic shale deposits in all over the world. In Australia especially, it's said that their total oil equivalent is more than 1 trillion barrels is still untouched. And then there are formidable deposits of coal. Coal can be liquefied, as you well know. And then the biggest unknown, or rather known, is gas hydrates. We know that there are gas hydrates which contain 100 to 1,000 times as much energy as all the fossil fuels combined. China is already producing gas from gas hydrates. And then there is the biotic theory of oil, which means that methane is coming from under the earth in the upper mantle and changing into oil. There's a lot of work on that. Now, there's a lot of people who don't believe that, but here is a unknown which has considerable evidence also. We don't have time to go into that. So may I have the next slide, please? So this is my basic message is this, that there is plenty of fossil fuel, number one. Number two, we can manage carbon dioxide. We are the experts of carbon dioxide or any gas injection. And third, fossil fuels will be needed regardless of renewables for many applications, especially transportation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Farouq. And now we move to Dr. Hamid, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your time today and listening to this panel with an interesting topic. I would like to start my presentation with a big appreciation to the oil and gas industry for fueling our lives for the last 2 centuries, providing us with food, medications, the rest is chemicals, hygiene products, medical products, construction products, vehicles, ability to heat and cool our houses, ability to travel faster, and many more. Next, please. Since August 27, 1859, when the oil and gas industry officially started, it has never faced opposition from public more than today due to concerns about the environmental impact of fossil fuels. I personally think it kind of deserves it because in the last 160 years, the biggest motivation of oil and gas producers have been making more profit. And as of today, the industry has not been able to efficiently change its environmental outlook. Next. If we carefully look at the several catastrophic, is the previous one actually? Okay. If we carefully look at the several catastrophic oil spills, numerous deadly incidents on oil rigs and the greenhouse gas emission, they are kind of rooted in wrong decision made by oil and gas decision makers who just decided based on profit. So I strongly believe if we had smarter decision makers, oil and gas was in a much better position than it is right now. Next. But regardless of all these obstacles, oil and gas industry remains to be a very important part of the energy industry in future. I refer you to the International Energy Agency's Sustainable Development Scenario called STS that considers a long-term role for oil and gas in the future of energy market. On the bright side of the oil and gas, we stay on the previous one, please. On the bright side of the oil and gas, apart from the critical need for fossil energy and the fact that currently we do not have access to any other reliable sources of energy, to be honest, we should not ignore the fact that oil and gas products have deeply penetrated in all aspects of our basically human life. That eliminating them is almost impossible. So if we decide to eliminate oil products from our lives, we will most likely look like this picture you see here. Next one, please. It is the most descriptive picture I've ever seen with respect to the importance of of oil-based products in human life. So it's honestly impossible to eliminate all these needs products out of the human life. So I believe oil and gas is staying with us for many centuries to come. Thus, it's a critical task for everyone in the oil and gas industry to help reducing the negative footprint of oil and gas operations and fossil energy production. So we really need to change the public view of the oil and gas industry because we have to keep working on producing oil and gas. So we should learn from 160 years of oil and gas history in order to make oil and gas industry cleaner. And it can be achieved by working hard on 3 major topics. Next, please. Number 1, next. Okay, so number 1, improving oil and gas operations to minimize environmental impact of subsurface operations, oil and gas usage. Optimizing upstream and downstream processes, stopping flaring gas, optimizing fracking operations, better water management. I think you should stay on the first one. Sorry, Dr. Moustafa. working on basically better subsurface monitoring and many other areas that we need to basically work on. Next. Second one is, and one of the most important ones, is capturing the emitted CO2 and either utilize it or store it is a big topic these days, and I will just elaborate on it in a few seconds. And third one, next, converting late stage oil and gas assets to either geothermal energy sources or carbon storage or subsurface energy storage or hydrocarbon storage. So basically repurposing all these assets that are not of value to oil and gas anymore. So next. And at the same time, working on renewable sources of energy, such as geothermal, wind, solar, and other sources, considering that none of these resources are 100% environmentally friendly. They all have negative environmental impact, and they all have carbon emission, as you see on this basically picture. So we must be really honest with ourselves and with the public about these impacts. Otherwise, in a few decades, we will be in the same position as we are with oil and gas today. Next. So on the carbon capture, utilization, and storage, just quickly walk you through the concepts. So it's basically with respect to capturing the CO2 from the sources of CO2 or directly from air, and either utilize it as products. Next, please. So CO2 can be converted to many products, useful products, feedstock, and can be used as injecting fluid in many applications, right? I don't want to go through applications now, but another option next is to basically inject CO2 into the geological formation and store them there. So basically they don't reach the surface to create any problem for the climate. Next, please. According to the National Petroleum Council, US storage capacity just in the US, not internationally, is about 3,000 to 8,600 gigatons of CO2 can be stored in potential, geological formation in the US. Currently, there are 19 larger scale operating CCS projects worldwide with a total storage volume of 32 megatons, basically. So we are taking advantage of very little portion of the overall potential for carbon storage. Next. So CO2 storage is currently the only viable approach to isolate large volume of CO2 from atmosphere, and this is from Department of Energy. Next, please. So a little bit about geothermal and how we can basically transition from oil and gas, combine oil and gas with geothermal. More energy than, overall, there are more energy than global total of oil and gas is hidden in geothermal resources. Potentially 3,000 to 14,000 megawatt electricity can be generated by geothermal. Is renewable, stable, with minimum carbon footprint. Next. Produces electricity consistently without regards to sun being out there, or if we have wind or not. The base load is consistent 24/7 type of base load. Next. And then growth in the US have been really flat during the last few decades, while solar and wind have really picked up. And the main reason is economics of this type of problem, cost of drilling geothermal well and production of the geothermal energy. Next. But remember, a majority of the cost of geothermal comes from drilling new wells. And remember, next please, in the oil and gas industry, we have drilled millions of wells, and a big portion of these wells are not really economically viable for oil and gas production anymore because they're either abandoned, they're either orphaned, or they're later stage in their life. So they can be potentially converted to geothermal, basically wells. Next, please. So these are basically a map of US with majority of oil and gas wells, and the red background basically shows where we are in the hot locations, the locations with temperature more than 212 Fahrenheit or 100 Celsius. at the depth of around 3,000 meters. So as you see, majority of the oil and gas wells are located in hot locations for geothermal. Next, please. Just looking at Texas, you see how much wells are basically located in areas that have potential for geothermal. And remember, a big portion of these wells are really old. They're close to their end of their life. So instead of spending a lot of money to abandon them and stop production from them, we can convert them to geothermal energy, making oil and gas cleaner. This energy can be used to basically operate the rest of the assets, the wells that are still producing. And the extra electricity can be sold to the grid. So there are a lot of opportunities actually with oil and gas wells. Even those that don't have potential for geothermal can be used for carbon storage for the same field, or even as energy storage in subsurface environments. So next, please. Okay, and I just want to draw your attention to the huge problem that we are having right now with unplugged and orphaned oil and gas wells that have been left without custody, and nobody takes responsibility of cleaning these wells. They are emitting methane and CO2 to the environment every day, to the air, and currently it's the responsibility of the government to take care of this well. And according to this basically Houston Chronicle article, there are about 3.8 million unplugged oil and gas wells in the US, 783,000 in the US only. And the average cost of abandoning this well per well is 100 to 300 per well, adding up to 117 billion US dollars basically to clean up only wells in Texas. And remember, converting these wells to geothermal energy can be actually a life-changing for energy industry, energy opportunities for basically electricity and heat, and also saving many of these wells, bringing back to a clean life, a green solution that helps basically government to add value, not just spending money on plugging these wells, but creating value out of these wells. Thank you very much for your time, and I will be available to discuss further.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamid. Then we move to Dr. Sherif.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to speak in this conference. So to sort of adhere to the conference's theme, I divided my slides into earth, energy, and environment. So I'll talk about the aspect of each of those, and then I'll sort of combine them together in a cycle to show how the oil and gas industry is not just here to stay, but we're actually focusing on the environmental part as well. So next slide, please, Dr. Moustafa. So to start with the earth, actually, if you look, I'm not really concerned with the numbers here as much like the exact numbers, but I am concerned with how the reserves, our proven reserves, are increasing every year. So if you think about it, a lot of people who don't understand a lot about the oil and gas industry would tell you that oil and gas we're going to be done in about 50 years and there's not going to be any more oil. But this is the opposite to what we're seeing here in these charts. So our reserves are increasing even though we're producing. And this is mainly due to two main aspects. The first being that we're making new discoveries every year or every month, and sometimes you can say even every day. And the second reason is technology. Remember, we're producing about 30% or 40% per well for oil reservoirs. Now, with the advancement in technologies, we can produce even more. So we're not just improving in terms of how much oil we can find, but actually we're improving in terms of how much oil we can recover as well. So we're playing a big part here, and we're going to be a big part of the future. Next slide, please. Okay. So when we talk about energy, if we look here, this is for the year 2020, according to the BP report, and it's divided based on different parts of the world. And it shows sort of where the hydrocarbons, oil and gas and coal are supplying energy and other resources, other alternative energy resources. And you can see in all of them, the hydrocarbons, including oil, gas, and coal, are actually more than 60% of the total energy supply, or total energy consumption, basically, is reliant on oil, coal, and natural gas in everywhere. And in some places, like the Middle East, for example, it goes beyond 90%, along with other places. And this is for 2020. So imagine the calls now for shifting towards an alternative energy. It's not really realistic, if you think about it, to suddenly remove something, a source of energy that's covering about 60% of our needs, and eliminating it in a few years and replacing it with something different. We simply don't have the technology or the infrastructure or the money to do this. So again, oil and gas is going to play a huge role even in the future. And it's very difficult to completely eliminate these sources of energy. It's going to be a mixture between renewables or alternative energy and hydrocarbons, but hydrocarbons are still going to be a big part of the future, based on these statistics. Next slide, please. Now, we're playing also a big role in the environment, and this is again something that people would laugh when we say, like we're or petroleum engineers and we care about the environment. People think that we're here to destroy the environment. But again, if you look at it, you'll find that we actually invest a lot of money, the oil and gas industry, in terms of research and development, and in terms of equipment and new facilities, all towards decreasing our carbon footprint. And one of the biggest initiatives is the carbon storage initiative. And actually, we have not just the resources, but the knowledge as petroleum engineers to apply this on an extensive scale. In fact, I can say we have we're the most knowledgeable people in terms of applying carbon storage, because most of the storage will occur in the oil and gas reservoirs. And so we know how to handle these reservoirs very well. We know how to inject our fluids, and we know how they behave in the reservoir. Now, just to show you sort of the extent to how much carbon we can store, or carbon dioxide we can store in downhole, if you look at this graph here, it shows that our average emissions for the year 2021 was around 33, let's say it's 33 gigatons. So if you look, and if you sort of try and average this line, let's say it'll be around 30. So if our emissions, our average emissions since 1990 is about 30 gigatons per year, and we look at this interactive map here, this is by the International Energy Agency. So this is sort of an interactive map where you press on a location and it'll tell you how much carbon dioxide you can store. But of course, this is a screenshot. You can find it on the website. So over here, this is a screenshot of where I clicked on the Middle East. And it shows in the bottom here that the Middle East has a storage potential of about 440 gigatons. So we can store in the Middle East alone more than 10 years of equivalent emissions, worldwide emissions, global emissions of CO2, more than 10 years can be stored in the Middle East alone. Now, if you click on different regions here, and I summarize them in the table below, you'll find that the Americas, which include North and South and Central America, have even more potential, along with Europe and other locations. So carbon storage shows that we have a huge potential of storing a very large volume of carbon dioxide along many, many years to come through this process, which is something, again, that we are very knowledgeable about as oil and gas engineers. And it's something that's not new, or the idea is not new. It's actually being researched worldwide on how to apply it safely, effectively, and how to store the CO2 for many years to avoid any kind of problems in the future. So we are investing in the environmental part as well. Next slide, please. So to sort of connect these together, again, we are here to stay, but we have to sort of look at it in a comprehensive way, or a holistic view. So yes, we have a lot of reserves, and we're discovering new things, and we're producing more with newer technology, and we are the main source of energy. But we have to connect these two together to the environment. So yes, we want to be a main player in the future, but in order to do that, we have to care about the environment. So part of our work or research has to go into recovering more hydrocarbons, but on the other hand, we also need to work on how to store our emissions, or our portion of emissions, safely through many techniques, most notably through carbon capture and storage. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sherif. All right. To continue on what we actually learning here from the previous speakers, I will also go and share with you a few things that few predictions I found. Some prediction are looking at for the year 2050. Some are actually extending to the 2150. And where is the role of the fossil and the renewable energy here? Also, there is a big factor that we don't really look at very seriously, which is the population on Earth. Let me look at this chart here. This chart is by Robert Hemper in GHK. If you look at this chart, actually it has so many information that really requires a lot of attention, in my opinion. First of all, this pink line, dotted line here, which is the world population. The world population will be increasing dramatically, as you can see right there. And the expectation in 2150, for example, 130 years from now, the expectation that the world will have about 12 billion people living on Earth. Too many people, and they require a lot of energy. So the renewable alone, which we all support, but at the same time, we need to make sure that with that increase of population, the renewable alone also taken into consideration that we are not there yet for the maximum sustainability of this type of energy. So the population will play a big part of the need of the whole world for all multiple sources combined. So the oil and gas is actually there to stay, and we're going to stay for a long time. Again, according to the same prediction from the same chart here, you can see it's actually divided into two parts: the liquid part and the gas part. The gas methane, as you can see right here, is actually growing all the way up to 2050 and 2060. The role of the hydrogen, when you see the color of this graph, is changing a little bit to pink, where the hydrogen will start to plug in. The expectation that the hydrogen to mature and get into really as a good source of energy that all of us can utilize is actually almost 100 or 80 to 100 years from now. So the hydrogen is not going to be really very effective today, as everybody in the panel is saying. We're looking at a few years from now to stop using the fossil. That doesn't make any sense, because what we can see here, that there is a lot of time needed and required for the hydrogen to really play part. I'm not going to say to take place, but it will play part as the combination of different type of energy resources. So expectation is the liquid probably will start to decrease. We'll talk about this in a second as well. It's going to start to decrease as sharp as we can see right here, or even the actual data that we see right in these days does not really support that sharp decline. The increases in the methane and the natural gases, as you can see right there. Okay, so the expectation of the renewable to really replace the oil and gas or the fossil in the short time is not really a practical thing, if you can say. Okay, so next. Then if you look at how realistic that decline is, it's not really realistic. If you take the consumption worldwide from the liquid, it actually decreases just a little bit, but it's not. But add to this that there is also the COVID effect. There are so many effects that we saw in the last few years, 2 to 3 years. The COVID effect and the reduction of the need for energy. It actually slowed down the utilization of the liquid. So as you can see, even with all the COVID that we had, the decline is not as sharp as it was expected by this line. So it's going to be a steeper change. It's not going to be 250. It may extend to more than that, and it will not be as quickly as everybody thinking that the fossil energy will end very soon. All right. Also, there is another thing that was published by the Department of Energy in the US that actually estimated the mix. The mix is very interesting because this is actually, in my opinion, a very realistic picture of the future. You have to divide things between residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation. The transportation, for example, how we convert all these transportation, especially big ships, airplanes, which require certain type of fuel. How can you convert this industry to be using the other type of energy like solar energy or hydrogen? It will take a very, very long time until you really reach that level of the transportation movement, moving from the fossil into the other side. Industry is the same way. We have so many heavy industry that it cannot be actually replaced by simply by converting to renewable. So if you look at the expectation, for example, where the two sources, the petroleum and the natural gas, if you look at the percentages that was predicted by the Department of Energy up to 2050, the percentage here, if you add them up, sorry, percentage if you add them up, it will represent about 45% of the portfolio of energy. If you say the oil and gas up to 2050, it will still represent almost half of the what's required for the resources of energy. Going back to the same one and following the same trend that we had here, and if extrapolate with the same trend that we saw, even with the COVID being with us, if you look at the same trend, follow the same line, it actually represents almost about 45 or 35 to 40% of the energy. So what the DOE and the GHK are expecting or predicting for the 2050 is that it's not going to be disappearing. You cannot actually make the fossil disappear. It's there to stay. It's going to stay for a very long time. And depending on the development of the new energy, how fast they are, how can you utilize the maximum efficiency of this new renewable, the energy of the fossil energy is actually going to say is going to be there to stay for a very, very long time, right? So to conclude that my comments on this, that the fossil is here to stay. All prediction expect that the fossil to stay for a very long time. Fossil oil and natural gas represent about 46% up to 2050. The liquid fossil for industrial and transportation, this is actually very important things to notice, that the replacement of these two very, very heavy on the consumption of the fossil energy, you cannot replace them in few years. Natural gas is for residential and industrial. So we'll see probably a shift of the application and the use of the fossil energy, but it will stay, I'd say, for a very long time, and also with a very high percentage of the total energy that the world is requiring, right? So with this, actually, we ended up the speech of all the panel discussion of the panel here, and we'll move to open discussion. We'll have engineer Mariam Sherif. Mariam, can you actually tell us what are the questions that you collected from the audiences, and we will actually share them with each other.
Okay, so I will start with the first question. How can we determine possible oil and gas wells that could be converted to geothermal energy projects?
Dr. Hamid, can you step in? Or
yes,
Dr. Farouq?
I think that's probably for me. So it is a really good question. And let me actually go back and mention that there have been not many, but several attempts to basically convert oil and gas wells to geothermal in the US and a few in Europe. And most of them were unsuccessful. And the reason goes exactly back to this question. I mean, how should we make sure that a well can be converted to geothermal? Otherwise, I mean, it will be a failure, right? So what typically look at a well to see if they should pick it for conversion or not is the downhole temperature and the water flow, right? These are the two main parameters that people typically select wells based. But it's not correct. There are many more parameters that we should have a look and include in our basically analysis. At PETROLERN, the last 2 years, we have been really trying to address this issue. So we developed a screening tool called ConvertTech that looked at more than 100 parameters, from geology, from reservoir basically characteristics, from well integrity, all the way to surface facilities, infrastructure, and most importantly, the economy of these type of projects, right? What would be the the price of electricity we generate from this well. Because I would say majority of oil and gas wells, you can generate electricity, but the price might not be now competitive with solar, wind, and other sources like gas, right? So this tool does a full techno-economic analysis, and we'll select the wells based on the final product, the price of the heat generated by this well and price of the electricity. And honestly, it's not just a well by well opportunity. We can convert a whole asset, like very old field, gathering all the wells and generate megawatt opportunities for power. But yeah, it's not that easy. It needs several parameters need to be looked at, and economic is the most important. And we have a tool for that, right? So,
anybody wants to add anything, Dr. Farouq, Dr. Sherif?
I'd like to add a comment that when we are ready to abandon the well has to be fully reconditioned before you can use it for anything. So that will be very expensive too.
Okay. Okay, Mariam, the next question, please.
What are the major barriers behind the deployment of CCS projects?
Anyone else want to the volume of the carbon capture?
Will you repeat the question? What are the major?
What are the major barriers behind the deployment of carbon capture and storage projects?
The major barriers.
Barriers.
Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest barriers would be the cost of capture, because carbon capture is a very costly process. The technology we have right now is just it's crazy with the costs.
Okay.
And just add to it, CCUS projects, basically, as already mentioned, they are all cost. They are not fully commercialized because of they are not beneficial, but profitable projects. So most of the projects that are in commercial stage, they either have large support from the government, or big oil companies. They're making a lot of money on the oil side. They're spending on carbon storage. So it is mainly costs right now. So it's an open area for research and development, basically to bring up new technologies to reduce the cost of capturing and storage. So since we are talking to the students, it's a very, very interesting, area for research, basically to reduce the cost of CCUS. So it can go more to commercialization phase.
May I make a comment? May I make a comment, please?
Please.
Yes, I'll say it very quickly that CCUS is fine in principle. At the moment, only 0.1% of the total CO2 in the world is being captured and stored. That's one thing. If you take all the CO2 in the world for 1 year, compress it, liquefy it, you'll need 8 fields the size of the Ghawar field, which is the largest oil field in the world, 250 miles long and about 70 miles wide and 400 feet thick. If you empty it completely, you need about 8 of those every year. So that's one part of it. The other part is, which is one of the questions here also, that if you, this whole thing about using CO2 for EOR is really a red herring. The total oil production by CO2 EOR at the moment is less than 300,000 barrels a day, what about 10, 20 wells in Saudi Arabia will produce. The main thing is that most of the reservoirs are not suitable for CO2 injection. So the CO2 capture and storage, there's a lot of discussion of it, but much of it is not practical.
Okay, Mariam, just allow me to ask a question here, because I was reading through the questions, and this is really a very interesting one. The question is, if oil and gas has solid future potential, as we all see it, what is represented in a very bad way in the media? Do you have any explanation for this?
May I answer that?
Yeah, please go ahead. I
Yeah,
think we'll all participate in this. So
yeah, look at this book here. Can you see this book? It's called Fake Invisible Catastrophes and Threats of Doom. And it's written by who? It's written by the president or the director of Greenpeace. And he admits, confesses that he falsified the data to raise money. So that's what's going on, part of it anyway.
Okay. Dr. Hamid, you want to step in? Or?
Yeah.
It's a very good question. In fact.
Yes. The thing, I mean, I think I mentioned in my presentation that, honestly, in this space is the most important things. Then, specifically, we are talking to students today. A lot of reasons behind all this, propaganda against oil and gas is either political or other people want to make money, business oriented, right? They are not really true reasons behind what we see. I mean, against oil and gas. I agree that, instead of putting oil and gas in car, engines, in our, tanks and burning them and create CO2, it's better to actually use them for better, for producing better products, right? Like all those valuable products that have been changing our lives in the last 2 centuries. To me, honestly, burning oil and gas is like burning dollar bills, right? Is wasting the oil and gas, and I think the objective of oil and gas should be actually going toward producing more products than fuel. But yeah, to me, unfortunately, politicians and people out there who advertise for renewable, clean energy like solar, like wind, electric cars, they are motivated and driven by either money or politics. And as I mentioned, all of those basically options, they are not 100% environmental friendly and without emissions. Just look at the solar panels. If you really want to generate, megawatt electricities, you have to cover a large, surface of land. And nobody talk about that. Everybody talk about, climate, but we are living on land as well, right? So yeah.
Chief, you want to comment?
Yeah, I'll just say again, following what Dr. Hamid said, it is highly political in nature. Look at all these big conferences that they're doing about the carbon emissions and things. As I'll tell you, as soon as you find more scientists and engineers in these conferences, other than politicians, then this is when it's real. But you'll find that again, people who have no sort of solid knowledge, no science. The idea is to look at numbers, to look at science, not just to speak. We have to, when people talk about renewables or alternative energy, they tend to sort of, the science part tends to disappear. So they only talk about the environment. They want you to picture this beautiful green field with solar panels in it, which is not true. And then on the other hand, you'll find a comparison with this smoggy black or gray picture with like a power plant. And it's simply not true. They play on emotions. They play on demagoguery. They do not focus on solid science. It's marketed. The renewable energy is marketed, or the alternative energy is marketed through basically false discourse and deceitful marketing. It's never based on science. You never see numbers being compared. And this is a big issue. Now, because I saw one of the questions talking about the electric car versus the gasoline. Let me tell you about this one, because actually in the student competition, one of our groups in the American University in Cairo, they're doing this. Their topic was a very slight comparison. And they did it in a very simple way, just to show how simple it is for a normal person without any kind of scientific knowledge to understand that the electric vehicle is a scam right now. It's not environmentally friendly as people are selling it. It's if you look at it, you will find that most or almost all of our electricity right now is coming from oil and gas. or hydrocarbons, let's say coming from hydrocarbons. So if we're converting this hydrocarbon to all the way to electricity, we're actually moving several steps more than to actually put it directly in a gasoline car. So that means we're losing more. And this translates to burning more fossil fuels at the power plant in order to supply the same amount of energy. So we're not being environmentally friendly. We're actually causing more pollution if we're converting to the electric vehicle. The only advantage here comes in the carbon dioxide being generated from a collective source, which is the power plant, compared to a distributive source, which are the cars. Now, this would actually be a big point if we have the technology for carbon capture, a costly technology. But right now, we don't have this capacity. So it doesn't make sense. So again, you have to look at the numbers. Do not look at these beautiful images of a utopic globe where we have no kind of problems as soon as we shift to renewable or alternative energy. It just doesn't make sense.
Actually, I echo what you all speakers actually said. This is really true. And I also want to stress what Dr. Sherif was saying, is that if we really read or listen to the media talking about the renewable energy, there is no basics of scientific basics. It's all talk, it's all fear, it's all building actually fears in the mind of people with has no evidence whatsoever scientifically. They talk about the temperature, they talk about the carbon, they talk about the change in the weather, the melting snow, and all these type of things that actually predicting it to happen based on what they see from the CO2 or the emission that we have. We're not saying that we don't have emission, but what we're saying is that if all this money and all this effort are invested in trying to reduce the CO2 and try to storage the CO2 or do things that makes the fossil energy more environmentally potential, then we will actually have more success than diverting from this big, huge source of energy. And as Dr. Hamid was saying, not only the energy that the motion of cars or industry, we have other goods that we live with. We live with so many things that comes out of products of the oil and gas industry. So eliminating that source of energy, that source of technology, this source of day-to-day use of humans, that will take a very, very long time. And it's not going to be tomorrow or in 10 years or plan for 2050 with zero fossil. That's really has no scientific basis whatsoever.
One last sentence I want to add here, because typically people that start talking against oil and gas, I'm the last 5 years I've been really working on the clean energy side, right? But I never forget about all the good things that oil and gas have done for us. But when I talk to this type of people, I ask them one question: what do you think would happen if all the oil and gas producers stop producing for 1 day only? Just think about it. And most people don't understand that. Now look at the way that U.S. government is begging OPEC to produce more oil. I mean, why we are in this situation? Why? I mean, what decisions you made to put you in this position, right?
That's 100 million barrels 1 day. So the whole world will come to a stop.
Exactly.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And public don't understand that.
I think we are out of time now. Thank you very much for the panel. It was really a very nice discussion, very nice presentation. Thank you very much for your participation or for the participants. Thank you for the questions. And I think we had a very fruitful discussion here. Thanks to the panel, Dr. Farouq, Dr. Hamid, Dr. Sherif, and also the organizers. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed Suleiman. Thank you, Dr. Ben. We have to close at this part. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Oraby. Thank you, Dr. Suleiman, Dr. Evenbet.
I think it was an excellent start to the conference. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you very much for the panelists and for the questions. I suggest that we keep the questions. There's a lot more questions that we can answer them at a later time.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you.